Hey everyone, this is the Citizen Game podcast where we strap Robert Ebert to the chair and... Wait, Robert Ebert?
The chair? Like we're electrocuting him?
Hold on, wait.
This is like a script. It's not a game script. It's a script.
Fuck the Oscars, you know? Fuck the Oscars! Fuck you!
Because the most subtle nuances of emotions could be seen on screen. With the PlayStation 4, games have now finally reached that stage.
Welcome to the Citizen Game podcast, a podcast where we strap Roger Ebert to a chair and force him to play a selection of video games to prove that they are in fact art and cinema, and that in fact they have surpassed all other forms of art.
Better than cinema.
They're better than everything. You can take your James Joyce and your Orson Welles, your Jean-Luc Godard, your Monet, your Rembrandt, and throw that all in the fucking garbage, because what we have now is better than that.
I'm glad that you listed all those things. I would like to proudly say that I don't know what any of those are, which means I've already done that mentally.
You've already done it. You've already purged inferior art from your mind and only have video games. I'm Ryan McKenna.
And I'm George. And we're going to talk... This is our series on so-called prestige games. Ryan, what the fuck is a prestige game?
So prestige game is a term that starts getting used in games journalism. I think it has its start in like the 2000s. But because it comes out of the concept of prestige TV, which starts really with The Sopranos in the late 90s to early 2000s and things like The Wire, and then later on Breaking Bad, etc.
And the prestige refers to the quality.
It's the cinema-like quality of these TV shows that led to them being labeled as prestige TV, and being viewed as like a more. It was when television really started to get viewed as an artistically legitimate medium, in a way.
And if you, I think a good article. If you just do a Google prestige games, you'll find an article by Vice, literally called "What It Really Means to Be a Prestige Game," if you want to check that out. And
yeah, that offers a pretty good definition.
You'll probably also get the article by some guy saying, "I think I'm done with prestige," or "I think I don't like prestige games," or something, which also gives insight to what it is.
From Reset Era.
Yeah.
Or no, it's just a fucking Medium post. Don't recommend people read Medium posts. No,
but it gives a little texture to what people are talking about.
But the conversation around prestige gaming is basically, especially, I think especially noticed this starting with the release of Last of Us 2, that people are getting really sick of it. There's been a big backlash in sort of discussions online about prestige gaming being bad.
And if I were to kind of just put some bullet points on what you would see, you basically look at The Last of Us, and it's like you have your cutscenes.
Arguably, The Last of Us is the peak of this.
Yeah, and what kind of cements it, and it's like you have your cutscenes, and these cutscenes are expected to be Hollywood level.
They are expected to feel like film.
To feel like they could be Oscar baity, I suppose.
Well,
not Oscar baity.
That's something we can get into later.
But also I would put, a lot of times they're put in what is a very bog standard action game.
Right. The gameplay here is often secondary. And this is what distinguishes prestige games from like what I would call art games.
Right.
Which are generally like
cohesive,
more experimental, and like I don't consider the Stanley Parable.
Right, yeah.
I don't consider that a prestige game.
No, and it's also the budget, because to have movies, prestige movies and TV basically inserted into your video games.
Because prestige game, I think, is
to mocap all that shit.
it's part of the games as art conversation, but it's narrower than that.
And it makes it, I almost want to say it's like, it's almost an accessibility thing in the sense of like, if you want your games to be artsy, or at least for an audience to understand that what they're consuming is artistic and important, is you make it look like something already familiar.
Right. So this is my distinction. So there are games that are like part of the games as art conversation that aren't prestige games. And the big ones recently I could think of are like Gone Home. I always get that mixed up with Fun Home. Very similar in topic. But one's a comic and one's a game. But Gone Home, The Stanley Parable, what else?
I mean, if you want to, any sort of indie, like Journey.
Yeah.
Back in like
Journey.
the 2012s.
Even earlier than that, stuff like Shadow of the Colossus.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
These are games that are self-consciously trying to be art, that are often part of discussions about games as art. But they have a key distinction in that they don't have the sort of polish, budget, and marketing power of the true prestige games.
And also, these tend to be a little bit more unique because the gameplay aspect, it's not just that it's secondary,
right?
But it's also, it's very toned down. Like, so you haven't played the Yakuza series, but
no,
you're vaguely familiar. And in those games, you have cutscenes that could form like, a TV show essentially. But those aren't prestige games because when it's game time, the games are allowed to be as cartoony and arcadey and fun as they want. Whereas, you compare that to The Last of Us, and you have a lot of focus on immersion, things like we're going to have characters walk slowly so they can talk for a little bit.
Yeah. There's a trying to make the cutscenes and the gameplay cohere.
Yeah, you try and smooth that transition. Like literally, you see. So
literally, there's no cuts.
Yeah,
literally, you have no cuts in the transition in a very common.
Well, to segue into Uncharted, you see in these older games you have to go to a movie, whereas in the later ones it's all completely in engine.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the Uncharted games, and because they're, I guess you call them proto-prestige, because they're not.
Yeah, there's stuff that's older than them that's also like that.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure we'll get to.
But we have, it's a good series to talk about, because you have a direct line to the Last of Us and Uncharted 4.
The Last of Us, the sort of peak of prestige games. And Uncharted, they do become prestige games in Uncharted 4. Right. And I think even a little in 3. I'll get into that later.
I was revisiting that, and we'll get into that, but I completely agree. And it kind of caught me off guard because I forgot about a lot of stuff. But, alright. So when I was a kid, about 12 years old, and I had just watched Indiana Jones, I would go into the backyard with a little cap gun. You know what a cap gun is? Like, you press trigger,
yes.
It makes
Are you from the 50s?
Yeah, apparently. I'm actually 62 years old. I'm the double nickel. I'm 55.
You're the kid from Iron Giant.
Anyways, I would go and pretend I'm Indiana Jones, but when I was pretending, I would just pretend to shoot Nazis with my cap gun and nothing else. I guess I got on a swing for a little bit to pretend it was a bullwhip. And that is Uncharted 1, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Tell me why this game doesn't suck, because you like it, right?
Yeah, it's fun. So, I also pretended to be Indiana Jones as a kid. I had a fake whip that my parents bought me.
Hell yeah.
And I actually tried to make my own Indiana Jones movie. And it ended with me throwing my brother into a pool and him injuring himself, cracking his head open, and having to go to the hospital.
Well, he shouldn't have gotten in your way of seeking the treasure.
you know, it. And despite that, you know, still had a good time. And that's why what I feel about Uncharted 1. I'm trying to make a bad segue work.
No, I get it. I get what you're saying.
But Uncharted 1, like, so the first Uncharted is like, I don't know. It's
the worst one? Can we at least agree on that? It's definitely
it's
the
probably
weakest.
the worst. Oh, it's definitely the least gameplay is unpolished and like it's more in the realm of excuse narrative.
What do you mean exactly?
Like the plot setup is really just an excuse for cool shit to happen.
Oh yeah, and I mean that's what the other ones are too. But so
like
go ahead.
I think what's fun about the first Uncharted, I don't know, the core gameplay still kind of works in spite of that.
It works,
And,
but I just get bored.
Yeah, I guess.
So I'll tell you.
And I will say, I find the characters much more annoying now than I did when I first played.
So
because I first played those games when I was 12.
would
so I
you
knew half the
describe
characters.
this character writing as Whedon-esque?
Not as relentlessly Whedon-esque as some things.
They're not too
Like,
quippy.
It's missing the the quality of making up words.
Bless you.
You're killing me by making me talk about Joss Whedon. It's cancer. It's fucking cancer. I think it's Whedon-esque to a degree. In terms of the constant quipping every time something happens and being like, well, that just happened. Is there?
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because I played those games when that was not as oversaturated, or at least I hadn't noticed it as being oversaturated
Now,
because I was a kid.
I don't want... This isn't me trying to be an asshole, but I understand if you play this game when you're 12 and it's fucking awesome.
Yeah, that's how I was.
And honestly, that's way more respectable than my experience playing it. Because I would have been a high schooler, and I had already played Spec Ops: The Line, and I had just learned what this little term, you may have heard of it. Have you heard of the term ludonarrative dissonance?
We're going to ban that term from this show.
We're not going to ban that term because
I've heard of the term
I'm more
ludonarrative
talking
dissonance.
about the term itself than
Yes.
trying to use the term.
Yes.
So this is something that a lot of people talked about, so much so that Uncharted 4 has an achievement for killing like 100 or 1,000 dudes or something called ludonarrative dissonance.
That's great.
I wanted to be a smart, I was like, I understand artistic games now. And so, of course, like every other writer was like, Nathan Drake, he act like relatable man, but he kill people, and that means this game is bad.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's... It is an element of genuine ludonarrative. I don't know if it's ludonarrative dissonance.
Well, before you even say shit, like, we are going to ban this term because do you know where the term came from?
Yeah, there was like a essay, right?
It was by Clint Hawking, who wrote, he made Far Cry 2, or was one of the leads on that game. But his writings were about the original BioShock, and it was something...
Yes, how in BioShock, even after you break your mind control, you still have to endlessly follow a point on your map. You don't have actual
But this
choice.
is what everybody gets wrong. Go back and read the post at some point, because it kind of made me realize that it was a term that was kind of sort of nonsense from the start. Not really nonsense, but no, everybody who read that saw something different in what he was saying. It was more like he felt that when the mechanics and the thematic stuff was talking to each other. They were saying different things. And what I've heard other people argue is like Uncharted isn't ludonarrative dissonance because it's perfectly comfortable with, Nathan Drake is shooting pirates.
It's just a moral dissonance.
Yeah, and it's like, it's more like, it's really just the body count. It's only absurd because it's a video game and you shoot 1,000 pirates. Because if this was a movie, they're making a movie.
And he killed 30 people.
Yeah.
Like if this was Indiana Jones and he killed 30 Nazis.
And so I don't have as much of a problem with it because no, it's not really.
It's not ludonarrative dissonance.
At least if that's how you're going to describe it, and we don't ever have to use that term again because I think you say that everybody thinks something different. And what I now realized what was actually bothering me, which wasn't a smart boy thing, it was just too many fucking gunfights. It's just too much.
Yeah, it is endless gunfights.
And I was not alone. A couple reviews at the time, like from IGN, said it's a little too much. But if you were to make a more big brain statement, I would say about this, is that your game, if you're making like an adventure game, you should have the elements that elicit that feeling. What do you have? You have gunfights, you have set pieces and puzzles, and you have the movies. And to me, the first Uncharted, the ratio is all wrong. It's like 80% gunfights. When your pacing with gunfights is more relentless than like Half-Life 2, which is like a first-person shooter, then I think you've misstepped somewhere. And that's, I think, later on in retrospect, what made it feel wrong. Because then you start going like, well, when he's like dodging snipers and like, it's like your 5th gunfight in a row, I'm just like, what the fuck am I doing here?
Yeah, and I do think that's something later games, both that imitate it and literally in this series, try to fix.
Yeah, self-consciously so.
Yeah, self-consciously trying to fix.
But this game is not self-conscious, which is why it's on the pre-prestige list.
Right. It's also not, it's not trying to be art.
No, and I also gained, after doing just a little bit more background on this, I gained just a bit more appreciation. I sent you some videos, I don't know if you watch them, of old...
I did.
Of old
Some
Indiana
Jones.
Yeah.
I didn't watch all like 8 hours.
No, just a glimpse. And you can, watching that with old Tomb Raider, it gives you a sense of like, this is what this genre was. And it's kind of lame.
Yeah.
You're just going through, especially with, I suppose I should explain what the fuck we're talking about since we're recording this. Some footage of 2 Indiana Jones games. One of them was for, it was a 90s PC game. That's the Infernal Machine. And then the second one is the Emperor's Tomb, which is like a PS2 era game. And the first one looks just like Tomb Raider, where you're just exploring an area and figuring out puzzles. And the second game has a little bit more life to it, but you're just like fist fighting like one dude at a time and occasionally using a gun. And I would imagine, I don't know if this had happened, but I'm going to imagine that the 90s game, you probably had to look up a guide because you got fucking lost at some point and the game didn't telegraph what you were doing. And all this to say is that you make an Indiana Jones game in 2007, or an adventure game like that, with spectacle galore, decent gunplay, and basically it's a smooth ride.
Yeah.
I understand now, because I didn't like the game at first, I understand now why people and critics really fucking liked this when it first came out. Got anything to add? No, just talked for a while.
Yeah, I basically agree. Do we want to say anything about the specifics of like the game's story?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, sure. If you got something to say.
So, This is one of the 3 treasures that Nathan Drake has been spending his entire life looking for since he was a child.
Right.
All 3 are the most important thing in his life that he's the only thing he's cared about.
Right, yeah.
Because the only game that doesn't do that is 2. And it's very... Like I said, this is the most excusey plot of all of them.
It's pretty... It works. It, like, works because you got a treasure, and it's got the basic-ass twist of, like... That, oh, it's a bad thing, actually.
The zombies twist.
Right. They kind of look like
which
vampires.
Is weird. They act like zombies.
Right.
The zombies twist is weird because, like, I mean, it's doing an Indiana Jones thing where in the later part, in the 3rd act, we introduce supernatural shit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that also happens in the 2nd game.
Well, doesn't it happen in all of them?
No.
Oh, shit. Well,
it does not happen in 3 and 4.
We'll talk... Well, yeah, I know it doesn't happen in 4.
No, it doesn't happen in 3.
I would say, like, the zombie stuff is probably more interesting, like, mechanically, because then you run and gun instead for a little bit.
Yeah, instead of just hiding behind cover, yeah.
I think...
It does break that up.
I don't know, like, I feel like we're struggling a little bit to talk about the first game.
Because the narrative is just so thin.
Yeah, and it's fine.
It's a generic action movie plot that's not trying to do anything interesting, really.
But what they had was the characters.
And who were... Yes. What they had was, one, the novelty of it being a video game.
The novelty of it being a video game with a half-decent adventure plot and all the things I talked about. There's just a few things. The fact that Nathan really should know better than think that Sully betrayed him.
Yeah? Well, that is a retcon thing,
Yeah.
because it doesn't seem like they know each other that well here.
Yeah, this series definitely has
That's
got
a
its
retcon thing.
fucking retcons.
Which we can talk about in number 3, where they happen. I don't know. Do you want to talk about the racism stuff?
Yeah, sure. Sure. Which, of course, that's another thing, like, is revisiting some of the articles of the time. Like, God.
I have never... I don't... Like, that was always something I saw on discourse around the game. Right?
Oh, you have? I did not...
I did.
Okay, well, tell me about it, then.
Just that, all the enemies are not white. And...
But there's a British dude who's bad. But he's not the real bad guy.
No, but the real bad guy is, like... vaguely... I don't remember what his last name is, but he's, like, vaguely... not white.
I mean, it's more than vague. Like, he's...
Yeah. But, I mean, I don't know what specific ethnicity he's meant to be.
Right.
So, I mean,
and
he's not white, but I don't know what specific ethnicity he's supposed to be.
It's just one of those things where it's like, I don't know, there probably wasn't a whole lot of thought put into it, and...
Yeah, and it was just generic, like... And, I mean, it was 2007. In terms of, like, the generic evil Latin American people.
Yeah, and it's just interesting, at least, like, the most mainstream outlets do not really talk about that. I mean, that's...
I don't think that became a talking point until, like,
right,
several
that's
years after.
just a sign of the times. What the fuck was I gonna say? I don't know. Fucking Uncharted.
You want to go to Uncharted 2?
Yeah, let's talk about, like...
Okay, Uncharted 2.
Uncharted 2 is fucking awesome compared to the first one. I still don't like it, but I completely understand. I mean, just think about, like, if the what these games are bringing is the spectacle. It's just completely unparalleled. Completely unparalleled from the start with the train crash, from the intercutting. I mean, the I don't know if you'd say, like, the writing directly, but, just the scene transitions between them talking to a beach
Yeah.
and building mystery. It's a pretty
It's
fucking
good.
solid
No,
start.
the in media res thing is done very well, actually. And, yeah, it's solid. It's the same basic game. I don't think there's any gameplay innovation in it at all, actually.
Well, the gameplay innovation is having a train. That's the
The train sequence, yeah.
which kind of it got me started on this thought where it's like trains. Could you say that's like one of the oldest action set pieces?
I mean, what, you want to go back to, like, the Great Train Robbery in, like, 1904?
And didn't Buster Keaton do some shit on a train?
Yeah. I did 1903, the Great Train Robbery.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, and I think it's like
The movie.
It's
not an actual train robbery.
It's because you can have people standing, and then you can have them standing on a train, and it just creates instant fun and action.
Yeah.
That's why you have trains in Spider-Man 2. That's why you have trains in old movies, and that's why you have a train in this video game, because you're literally just doing the same shit where you're...
But now there's this element of movement, so it's all more visually interesting.
And it's still to this day, you know, whatever tricks they use where you're slowly kind of moving to a different spot as you make your way up the train.
Yeah, no, it works.
And also you have to dodge, like, oncoming shit, if I remember right.
Yeah.
It's pretty good shit, and again, for me, it just falls apart because the pacing is absolutely relentless. You get this one quiet moment, which is the non-combat exploration with your friend after the train crash. I forget the guy's name.
Tenzin is his name.
Yeah, you get that, and then it's back onto tank battles and just relentless action. But I understand why people went pretty apeshit for this when it came out.
Look, it's fulfilling the same fantasy of the first game, of, like, being able to play Indiana Jones, right? But now it's even more. Now you like fuck a vaguely exotic,
Yeah, Nathan
sexy
Drake
femme
fucks.
fatale.
Nathan Drake fucks, and
Yeah,
that makes it better
explicitly.
than modern Marvel movies.
Yes.
And would you say though, like, this is where it gets a little weird because there is just a creeping bit of, I don't know if you call it self-consciousness or just pushing up against the limits of believability or whatever. But the bad guy eventually he asks you, how many men have you killed of mine, Nathan Drake?
Yeah.
And there's not really a point to it.
No, there isn't. He says, like, how many men have you killed just today? But there's no point to that. We're not meant to interrogate that. Who cares?
No, and there's only a few... and I wouldn't even put this in the same category, but there's, like, the part where they're, like, trying to rescue a camera guy or whatever.
Yes, and he gets shot, and then he eventually dies, I believe.
Yeah, or he gets shot, and then the bald bad guy shoots him. And it's
I
just
don't
another...
remember that guy's name. realizing I don't.
Clara trick, I don't know, but
He's
bad guy.
vaguely Eastern European, so that now all the bad guys are white, so we're not racist.
Well, that is like an improvement.
Right, but
yeah,
he's vaguely an Eastern European, I guess, war criminal of some kind. But he's given no real personality other than being evil. And then he becomes like he becomes like a blue
he drinks
villain?
he drinks the blue juice. That
And becomes
they say
like super powered?
They say that the blue juice is why Genghis Khan won.
Yes, but then we kill him. Then Nathan Drake kills him. So
But
I guess it wasn't
but
that
that's
great.
all fine because we have Harry for the... Isn't that his name, Harry? The Australian dude. Or am I just mixing him up from... I don't fucking know. But
The guy who betrays you?
yeah. What's that guy's name? Bad guy, Uncharted. No, not the... Well, in case you're wondering, Lazarovich is the bad guy. Is the main bad guy. No, who the fuck is this? Harry... Yeah, it is Harry. Harry Flynn.
Right, Harry Flynn, who's the guy who betrays you and works with Lazarovich.
Yeah, and you have him for, like, a more dynamic and...
He's definitely the much more... Not that it's a hard contest.
That's because he's, like, evil Nathan Drake or whatever.
Yeah, and he's got a nasally British accent.
Because there's
which makes
a
him instantly
theme...
hateable.
There's a theme in this game.
Right, this game is trying to have themes.
An
unlike the first game.
Honor among thieves.
Right.
I guess.
Its theme is honor.
Kinda.
Which you're meant to get from the fact the title is Among Thieves.
Yeah, they are among thieves.
Right.
And they do be honoring. Except when they don't.
They don't. They
except
keep
when they
each
don't.
other and fake betraying each other.
Yeah. So, what I was getting at with the camera guy is, I'm just like, why do I give a shit about... Why would Nathan give a shit about this guy? And I think that is when I feel the gameplay, with its just excessive body count, does start creeping in my brain, where I'm like, look, why does he give a shit? And then there's the moment where Nathan Drake gets shot.
Yes, which is sort of the opening of the game.
Yeah, and it's in that everybody knows, like, to a certain extent. Well, this is a good prestige game talking point. You would never do something like that now, where it's like you have the direct contradiction of he's getting shot, but he gets shot all the time. What the fuck?
Right, where it's like he gets shot in the chest all the time by bad guys, but in the cutscene, when he gets shot once, it's like debilitating.
Right, and that's just a thing that people accept, except when they don't. And you kind of choose a side of that spectrum, I guess. And crossing that... My counterexample is The Last of Us, where when you need Joel injured, you don't have him shot. You have barbed wire, like a barbed pole run through him.
Yeah.
And it's like a small thing you do so that you're not directly thinking. It's like, that looks a little bit more painful than a grazed bullet, which I assume you're supposed to assume what happens when you get shot in gameplay.
I think at some point the director was like, well, Nathan isn't actually getting shot. He's actually dodging the bullets, but his luck is running out.
That's
right.
What health is. I forgot that they... like, someone officially talked about that.
Yes.
Which, I mean, who gives a shit?
Yeah. So in the story, Nathan doesn't get shot unless it happens in the narrative.
You know, that did give me this thought, though, of, like, you couldn't do this because it would be too cartoony. But what if you just had, like, instead of the red or the screen getting gray, you have, like, some sort of timer, or, you know... Fuck,
timer
what was I
what?
trying to say? I think Joseph Anderson... Have you ever seen Joseph Anderson's videos?
No.
He's just... Someone probably who's listening to this has seen him. But he talks about, like, what if you had some sort of score multiplier where the more guys you shoot in a row, the more lucky you quote-unquote get, and the more you can just run out and not get hit outside of cover. Trying to kind of, like, gamify... Not feeling it?
That sounds goofy as shit.
That is, and it's too goofy for what they would eventually go with. But
Yeah.
I could imagine, like, an alternate universe cartoony version where you can maybe do something like that.
Okay, do we have anything else to say? Because 2 also still does the supernatural thing with the goop, the blue goop that makes you... It makes you a superpowers, but it also makes you a Yeti.
Just that I'm so... When I think back on this game, I think, like, that whole last third act, because it feels like the game should end, and then you have the whole chapter where they're in, like, the secret city with new enemies to fight, and they have, like, a 3-way battle going, which I love.
Blue Shreks.
Yeah, I love three-way battles and shooters. I like that in Halo and everything.
Yeah.
And I just think it's like that's fucking awesome. But when I go back to play the game, I'm always just disappointed with the ratio, and I find myself at that one part of the game where you're like counter sniping dudes,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, what the fuck am I playing? Like, it does. It feels like a military shooter too much sometimes,
Yeah, yeah.
and it just doesn't work. And I wouldn't bitch so much about it, except Uncharted 4 is there, and that's to talk later.
So, Uncharted 3, it's a long time before you shoot someone in that game.
Did you just play the intro? Because that's what I did this morning, and I was thinking the exact same thing.
Right? I'm just thinking this because your thing was like it's constant shooting. It takes a really long time to start shooting someone.
Yeah, it's you go through
you
a
get a
brawl
fist fight.
fight.
The opening is a fist fight. Then you're a kid because you have the flashbacks that are intercut with the openings of the game, right?
Yeah.
And then you're sneaking around with a silenced pistol doing like stealth shit where there's like 3 enemies in that whole section.
Yeah, it's and then it finally gives you some stuff right at the end. And then it transitions into a more standard Uncharted level. But honestly,
Right.
the beginning part, I'm thinking this is pretty good shit. Like it's a good fun intro. I think it's probably the best intro. I mean, what do you think?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, because it continues to be intercut with the kids stuff throughout that.
And you've got so many elements. You've just got the like triple cross sort of thing, and
Yeah. So Nathan as a kid is interesting because this is where this game wants to have like themes.
this is where it's the Last Crusade,
Right. God damn it! You're exactly right. It is the Last Crusade.
But this was my favorite at some point, but that's usually because I forget that the rest of the game kind of fucks everything up. Not like too badly, just things just stop making sense after a while.
What?
Talbot.
Talbot.
Like what the fuck his deal was.
He's also evil Nathan Drake.
Yeah, but also he's like going around and like shooting people with tranquilizers, and there's weird hallucinogen stuff. There's just some stuff that just isn't. Oh shit! There's.
Well,
I was thinking like there's.
So Talbot's
ahead.
evil
I'm losing
Drake,
track.
which is kind of what the final villain. Every single Uncharted game, the villain is evil Nathan Drake. In all of them.
You're
That's
right.
the only thing they know how to do.
I mean, it makes sense because you have your. Well, in this one, it's trying harder though
Because he's also the main
theme,
villain is also evil Sully.
Yeah, and it's trying to do some sort of if you keep pushing this, someone's gonna die sort of thing. Which no one does, and it's completely fine, and it kind of
The game pulls a trick.
Pulls its punches.
Where it tricks you into thinking Sully's dead because they've been foreshadowing that. But it's not. He's not dead. He's fine. It's fine.
I guess if I'm trying to sum up like what I mean by everything fucks up. Like I think those chapters are really good, but then you just start repeating beats from Uncharted 3.
This is Uncharted 3.
And it's this weird Uncharted 2. And it's just this weird mishmash. Some stuff just feels like it was lost to like, development. Like more specifically what these people's deals are, whatever this society is.
Yeah.
The water, whatever the fuck
the water's a
water
hallucinogen. That's pretty well explained.
But what are they gonna do with it? And
make it a weapon? I don't know, because it's that is kind of weird. The villain's motivations are kind of undefined, but what this game decides to focus on as its attempt to give itself themes is Nathan and Sully. Like it has which is the correct choice, because you compare it to you compared it correctly to Last Crusade.
Yeah.
Except in this one, it is a relationship that's already existed.
Yeah, yeah.
Like Indiana Jones's father didn't exist in the first two Indiana Jones movies, whereas Sully has
and
been
they
there
kind
the
of
whole time.
even further established that he's been there the whole time.
Yeah, because they establish he is basically Nathan's father. The fourth one makes this really weird, but just taking the third one as its own, we are left to presume that Nathan is just... The fourth one doesn't really take any degree to explain why an American orphan is in Portugal.
That's fine.
But we are meant to take it that it has just been Nathan and Sully since Nathan was 14.
Yeah.
And
We
that
do
they've
a
been-
little bit of retconning every now and then.
Yes, there's retconning later, but in this one, we're meant to take it that like Sully is the person Nathan is like closest to, and he's basically his dad, and he's getting old. He's getting too old for this shit, and Nathan, in pursuing this treasure, the second treasure that he's been pursuing his whole life, after obviously Drake's real resting place and El Dorado in the first one. Now we have this.
This really is the Indiana Jones you have the second one which goes to like a different culture, and then
God damn it! You know what I just realized?
what?
Do you remember how Last Crusade opens?
Yeah.
It opens with the fucking flashback to him as a teenager.
That's what
God
I was
damn it.
getting at with the.
I didn't
thought
realize that.
That was the first thing. Like I wasn't talking about it
because I just thought it was about his dad.
No, I was talking about like it starting with him being young.
Bro, you're absolutely right. It literally has the same structure as Last Crusade.
So IGN gave this game a 10 out of 10.
That's not surprising to me. Because like I said, this is like... This is proto-prestige gaming. Because it's like, now we're going to have emotional stakes and character, internal conflict.
It's just
Like
strange
real
that it's
internal
like
conflict.
just having it. That's what it took.
Yeah, it's not... Like, if this... So, here's my thing. Like, you said, these are kind of quote-unquote Oscar baity,
Yeah.
right? But if these were movies, they'd just be kind of unexceptional action movies.
They'd be kind of shitty, or not
Yeah.
not too shitty, because
Not
the
terrible,
character
like-
work is pretty good, but there's
Yeah.
some stuff that just wouldn't be acceptable
No,
in
it wouldn't be Oscar bait. It would be a popcorn movie.
No, you're right.
It only
you're
gets
right.
to be art. It only gets to be art because we have lower expectations because it's a video game.
But to push back, just when IGN gives it a 10 out of 10, that's before they start thinking like that. What makes it a 10 out of 10 is just you have characters you care about, and then you have the most polished spectacle of the bunch, which this game does kind of have.
So it has because it's got like an actually pretty fun sequence where you fall out of an airplane. That's cool.
It kicks ass, and
It's got the boat sinking sequence where you're having a gunfight on a boat that's sinking.
just the whole, but also just the whole
That-
boat
that-
level. That
that whole level's really great.
But that perfectly sums it up. Where that level is just complete filler, an excuse to.
Oh yeah, because those pirates you fight in that level never come back.
Yeah, and the thing is, that's fine. That's maybe how you should make a game like this, is design for spectacle first. Come up with the action beats and then just work it
They
in there.
obviously had the idea of you have a gunfight on a cruise ship that's sinking.
I just think that,
and then
a
worked
10 out of
backwards to get that.
whatever you call like a perfect game, it's like, I guess what I'm saying is the expectation, there's not an expectation that the story has to fit together all nice and neat for it to be 10 out of 10.
Because if this was a movie, you would cut that whole pirate boat sequence.
And you know
It's
what?
pointless.
We'll talk shit about The Last of Us later, but I think it was...
It doesn't have anything like that, I don't think.
But also, just like, I think it did help critics, like, certain people come to their senses and be like, oh, it can be up to par, you know?
Like, it can be a well-constructed, like, not a well-constructed script for a video game.
You should have
Even if we
higher
don't-
expectations.
Even if we don't like Last of Us completely, it is a well-constructed script.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Like, paced.
it's my favorite Naughty Dog game, easily.
Absolutely. Like, I think it's very well-paced. Whatever, we'll discuss that on the last
though?
episode.
To that point, though, to me, this type of game, this type of where the platforming, if you want to call it that, the climbing doesn't really have any depth to it. The puzzles are brainless. The shooting is fine, and it's built on spectacle and cutscenes. The pacing is what makes it or breaks it for me, and that's why I can't quite do it, because I can't quite like it, because I would rather be playing, I don't know, fucking Gears of... I mean, I think Spec Ops The Line has better core gameplay than these games, and you're not even supposed to enjoy that. I won't open that can of worms, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. I'm thinking about Uncharted 3's pacing. Because there's that one sequence in the middle after you fall out of the airplane.
Oh, yeah.
You're in the desert.
We have to talk... I was the other section that I replayed to revisit these games, and it's kind of fucking absurd. Or it pisses me off, because you go through that long walking sequence, which I think is good. It goes on long enough to make you
that
feel...
it feels exhausting.
But then he gets in a fucking, like, then they have a fucking set piece fight. And it's like, I know you have, like, water afterwards, but I'm like, drink some fucking water. You set up all this shit. I don't know. But that's another example of, we're going to slow some shit down so we can make a point. Like a...
But what point is that sequence even making?
Not like a point, just...
a narrative point. I know what you mean.
Yeah, just to put more of a beat.
An ellipsis.
You know what that is? You feel the beats more in this game than Uncharted 2, where it's
definitely more deliberately paced.
And that kind of leads into the Neil Druckmann. I almost said Neil Druckmann.
Because these are all written and directed by, let me get her name.
Amy Hennig.
Pulled up somewhere. Amy Hennig. Hennig. Yes. She wrote and directed the first 3 games.
Yeah, and I would say, like, if you could explain the progression of these games, which is interesting, because you think, like, there's the separation between, like, the Neil Druckmann era and her era, but it seems like they're...
Not really.
Yeah,
like,
there's more of a transition.
3 is already moving towards 4.
Yeah, and that's what I was surprised by revisiting it. And I would say what makes it different is you have more deliberate beats. You have, here's your combat beat, here's your climbing beat. I mean,
you have an opening that slowly builds up to your first big shootout.
Yeah, and then that's all Uncharted 4 is built off of, where you can literally, in the menu, I'm going to click, like, different encounters through the game, because you have, this is your combat arena. Once we're finished with this, we're going to have a different thing for you to do, versus kind of just peppering enemies all throughout the whole experience. Yeah. Because it's a game, and you're just shooting guys because it's a video game.
Whereas, in the 2 Neil Druckmann Uncharted games, because he also directed, I believe, Lost Legacy.
If he didn't...
No, he didn't direct it.
Well,
he didn't direct it.
There's still... You couldn't even tell. Did you play that?
No, it's... yes, I did.
Yeah. It's interesting, because...
no, it absolutely feels like him.
We can talk about that one a little bit when we do Uncharted 4.
We should talk about both of them.
Since it is
because they're both
Uncharted.
Really the same game.
Yeah.
It's Uncharted 4.5.
Yeah. You know what? Who we haven't talked about at all?
Who?
Elena Fisher.
Right, Elena. I mean, she's... What is there to say?
What's there to say is that it's jarring that first like 2 games in a row they're like, they got divorced and then they got back together, I guess.
Oh, you mean in 2 and 3?
Yeah, they're
Because in 2 they broke up and then they get back together, and in 3 they got married after 2, then divorced, then got back together.
that they couldn't. She's, you know what? I think she's her and Drake are a good couple to, dialogue and banter wise. But it's weird that they couldn't figure out.
Think of something to do with her in 3 that wasn't what they did in 2.
Yeah, and it makes sense that like 4 kind of focuses in on that, and and that's the depth it's built off of. It does feel kind of lame.
Well, 4 and the depth of a totally retconned in relationship.
That too.
Because 4, it's jarring if you play 4 right after 3 because of how much the importance of Sully like dips in 4.
It's kind of sad that I mean, I get it because Uncharted 3 is more about Sully, but they also don't really they don't have the sauce for it, and it would be cool if you had a more prestige-y game that was more about Sully and Drake. Like they saved that relationship for the last
for
one.
something like 4. Well, because if they'd
and 4 kind of repeats a little bit of the themes that they try and get into with this game, which is like, why are you doing this, man?
Yeah, stop. But 4 reaches a stronger conclusion, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Where you just do stop.
Yeah, you stop.
You just stop. Stop doing this.
You finally stop.
4
You have
reaches,
killed enough people.
Yes. 4 still doesn't give a shit about 95% of the people you kill.
But what do? They make them stormtroopers. They make them
they make them South African.
Shit. No,
that's not a joke.
I mean, yeah, they're a paramilitary group. They make them less like you should give a shit about them.
Well,
the least.
I mean, in 3 they're British.
Oh shit, you're right. Never mind.
In 3 they make them British. Like, literally the opening of 3, I saw someone say, like, the opening of 3 is arguably insanely, like, stereotypical.
And I say, that's fucking fine.
A London pub, and they're just all these massive dudes in flat caps and with shaved heads who instantly beat the shit out of them.
They're football hooligans.
No, they're just these huge guys in flat caps and hoodies who instantly just are down to, like, kick anyone's ass.
Fucking, you know what? Yahtzee Croshaw can cry more. I don't care.
He's the one who said that.
Yeah, he's it's fine. I take it completely back. They kind of had this shit figured out since 2, where it's like the first game, they're pirates, and they're
mercenaries.
It's like, you have this white guy coming and shooting up a bunch of people, and it's like, well, the second game they're military guys. It's fine.
They're like vaguely Eastern European war criminals.
Yeah, it's fine. And then third game, they're British. It's fine.
Yeah, so it's fine to kill them
until you fight pirates in the most awesome,
the random Middle Eastern pirates you fight for like no reason
in the most fucking awesome part of the game.
Yes, that is totally pointless to the story.
And then 4, it's a paramilitary. It is weird how like in
4 it's like a South African paramilitary group.
But the leader is like sympathetic. She gets to be a real person
and becomes a hero in the next game.
The games kind of use. I feel like there has to be like another term for this, but I guess I want to just use it like real-time strategy logic, or like Lord of the Rings logic, where it's like, all the background guys, they're not real people, and the hero characters are worth 100 of them, and that's fine. That you can build a game like that, and that's fine.
Yeah, it's not ludonarrative dissonance.
It's not ludoparative pissonance. Go fuck yourself.
Like, ludonarrative dissonance would be if the narrative told us killing was wrong.
Yeah, that's the difference. If
Yeah, like the narrative doesn't care about these guys.
They're-
You might find that uncomfortable that the narrative doesn't care, but the narrative doesn't care and the gameplay tells you not to care. They're not dissonant at all.
Yeah, and it's but it is interesting because this is where you get to why these games became bigger than like their predecessors. Because what are you doing in like Tomb Raider? You're like shooting tigers while jumping on things, and Indiana Jones, you punch some guys and shoot them, but it's like one at a time. It's like, well, you just build a slick Gears of War third-person shooter, add a little spectacle, make the client. It's luxury gaming, you know, like it's where you don't.
It's comfort gaming.
It's comfort gaming, and that's why I respect these games now. God damn it! There's something where I was like, you're not smarter than the. Sometimes people think they're smarter than entertainment. That's just trying to be entertainment, and that was me. I was trying to be smarter than the Uncharted games, but you know what? They're fine, even if I don't personally enjoy them as much.
Yeah, they're fine.
They're fucking fine. All
Yeah,
right.
Okay.
You think
so
we
next time we should talk about the other two Uncharted games, the Druckmann era.
The Druckmann era, the Cuckman era.
Yeah. The Cuckman, or the Cuckening.
All right, I think that's the show.